Hey there.
Hey, how's it going?
Wonderful. There's a buck axe throwing person downstairs.
What's going on?
There's a buck axe throwing guy downstairs.
Oh, man. You
No,
had a chance to talk to him or just?
it's a guy. I don't know which side he's on. He's wearing a shirt probably outside that wants to clear out. Hey, what's up, Mayor? The incomplete application that we got.
Oh, which one was that?
Uh,
So that one is complete now. We got the reports.
oh, it is.
So unless we're talking about something different, the planning and the, these reports are in there. We just came late.
As long as we have it. But that's a valid excuse to deny them.
Yeah.
Weird that the meeting started at 7.
I know.
Getting nervous?
Oh, no. Sort of, right?
No, that's high school.
Oh, yeah, she's fantastic.
Your guys' fights.
Yeah.
We both are just.
So. So like she likes the frosted cakes. It's like fluffy. I like the frosted. And so we're having like 70s cake. It's better.
That's a great idea. I like that. You want to save extra pieces, bring it back here, or we can participate. Is it gonna be a big celebration or?
Pretty, I mean, we got everybody. People,
Oh, geez. We should get a lot of gifts.
yeah.
You recall we received the.
So there's the thing about this one. It's interesting. Quite a while ago. So and then the ownership is having this issue. License is second COVID. So that's only 45 days up, so. Yeah,
You touch on it.
it's.
It's over there.
You can, in my memo, I don't know if you read it, but they have a number of options. You can approve. So approve with caveat or something, or just. I didn't see a statute, so.
The governing body can either approve the license or deny the application. We recommend. And then, state that.
Yeah, Bill wants to.
I'm gonna send, take it here.
Yeah.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm good.
Hi, Brad. You're really good. Recovered? No. Still in the hospital?
Still in those. Yes, why it's not good.
That's not good.
No.
You are, it's not good. It's been almost a month.
Over. Yeah. Yep. So, like you type in it, you see,
So a lot of this problem is respiratory, right? Sort of
little
secondary
bit.
follow-up to COVID.
Yeah, and there's some. Yes.
I mean, I knew he had medical issues.
Hey, John.
Hi, how we doing?
Good.
Good.
Yes. Hey, Tyler, me, how are you?
Good.
nice outside.
Oh, yeah, loving it. The small screen PC, the thing that you put up now ahead of the meeting.
It's, yeah, that one over there. And so that one is what all of our computers feed into that cabinet back there, which feeds into the over there. So a lot of our audio goes to that computer instead of us having to mess with. Makes them interrupt each other.
So we don't have to do anything, it'll come up automatically. That's what I asked.
So there's not,
Oh, yeah,
that's,
there's no
so
expansion.
if you make that larger, you'll see there's a button right in the screen.
So it says exit. Oh, minimize, exit, minimize.
Yep, so. she can do some of these. Good. That picture when it's so long.
I didn't read it carefully enough. I thought it said exit.
Oh,
The exit minimize, absolutely.
That'll be one of
so
those
we have
that,
all of these things. with
the rate we lose people.
Yeah.
I've done the PT for the last 4 testings, and we haven't even had a combined total of 20 people. It's crazy.
Hopefully it goes like this. So we got all the stuff. So trust. No. There's no cheap version. Yes.
Yeah, you're on.
So you can do-
So now this one.
So if I remember, I have to status.
Yeah, no, how long? Yeah. It looks like what I was told, I didn't see this, but work was going on. To put in the throat. So they were working on it. That's another cell phone. Yeah. It's because of strange. Did you get to John C. Fremont days?
I went home. I didn't actually make it back.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Like 75 inches every single time.
Oh, that's fine.
I'm like, it's perfect. A lot of people watch it. Yeah.
All right. Evening. Yeah. Huh? Oh, it's all good.
How's it going?
Good, how are you doing?
Good.
Oh, right. So far, are you?
There's sign in the mailbox. Screen, didn't show any photo. Why not? Mark, did they get enough signatures?
We turned in about 4,000 over what was needed on each signature. Though that was the raw count. Obviously, some of those are gonna get thrown out.
What was the deal? They were talking about 1,000 might get kicked out because I mean, they said it wouldn't be fair to smaller communities. I just heard this.
Oh, that was the court ruling that they won a couple months ago that said, the ACA review and the Nebraska medical marijuana went to court, saying that the requirement to have 38 qualified counties was not constitutional. It violated the one person, one vote rule. It made some votes more important than other votes. The first judge agreed with that and said we didn't have qualified counties. The second judge set that ruling aside. It will go to another court to decide whether we actually had to. They did go out. I don't know if they actually got 38 qualified or not. I think that they did, but I don't know that for sure. But the next few weeks are going to tell what kind of legal challenges and what else is going to happen. So
Well, Dollar Tree, one Sunday after church, I went out there and there was a guy and he was taken from Fillmore County, Dodge County, and some other county.
yeah, I know I was carrying for 5 or 6 counties myself, just like Fremont. I mean, we've got so many counties so close to us.
Yeah.
And in most of the other shops that I had, I mean, they had for Saunders and Washington and Dodge and even some Douglas.
Well, this guy, as much if not more than I do,
Uh-huh.
and I can't believe some of the people they just, I don't know. Come on. At least find out what it's about.
Yeah,
As opposed to the.
yeah, it's big. I know we needed 87,000 on each sheet. I know they turned in over 90,000 on each sheet. So we had a little cushion, but we'll see if it's enough. But
You know, I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but you know what, if they ever saw what it could do medically.
Yep. And that's, you know, regardless of whether you feel recreational or medical stuff, that should be, I mean, the way things are now, you know, the kids are, you know, the children that will see, they're only with the can't get old and everything. You know, some of the newer stuff, the Delta 8s, 9s, 10s, the other stuff is pretty much the same as that anyway.
My daughter's nanny's grandson at 3 was diagnosed with the worst epilepsy you could have. And it was, I mean, it was awful. He's doing better now, but the doctor basically said, this is what will help, but I can't do anything. about it."
Yes, oh, yeah.
They were gonna move to Colorado just to be able to get it.
The doctor told me that for her migraines and even some of the apartments and stuff. In this state, I can't recommend them, but you're telling me what they're doing, I'm not.
Yeah. It's too bad.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, there's so many, well, the problem is it's still classified as Schedule 1 narcotic and as far as federal is concerned. So that, which basically means it has no redeeming value, which isn't true. So that's, Brenda's always like saying, well, we need more studies. Well,
This is,
yeah, they don't want to look for what they don't want to find.
yeah. Well, this is his last hurrah
Yeah.
for a while.
Well, I mean, if it gets to the ballot, I think it passes overwhelmingly. It doesn't matter if it gets to the ballot.
Well, is there time for it to get on the November ballot?
Yeah, that's what we had to be in by July. We had to be in by July 7th in order to make the November ballot. But there has to be a final ruling from this judge and everything else. That has to be done by like September 18th to actually make the ballot.
That's not that far away.
No, it's not.
Well. They took him the longest talk he's done today. He did really well. Still another. Probably another 2 weeks.
Yeah. It was pretty neat. He was in the House chambers.
Now they're worried about
He gets up and he was, it would have been his mom's 79th birthday.
Could you have a free one?
I know. And he said,
Yeah.
my mom was different.
And he's up here. Like I said,
He's got a shoot. It was kind of
after
funny.
being very bad.
It was cute. It was funny. Hey, guys. Mr. Brady? We're doing good. Not too bad. Yeah, most people, they said, you got some sun. I did. It was really Saturday that we were walking the car show. Yeah. Yeah, it was close too.
What we're talking about.
In a walk before.
Oh, okay.
Still hot.
Oh, okay.
That's fine.
Oh, that's simple.
Still waiting on
Right.
Good.
Too much.
Sure.
Ask you a question. She wants to be using hand in phones for the police department.
Oh, for like the 911 thing. It's not coverage, I think that's. I don't think the purchase. So. But no, so. Yeah, tomorrow.
No, no.
You just have a high standard, right? Well, I'm sure that's it.
Is that good or bad?
I don't know. I don't know. It was good. It was good. They had 9 entries, 7 showed up. And it was about 2:30. They were all done for baby back ribs and chicken wings. They're all donated from wholesale. They each brought in 4 judges. Brought us council and there was 1 chicken wings. And they were all good. You know, yeah, I mean. You know, what I'm saying is. I don't know. Well, they posted it on, I guess, not supposed to. They're supposed to just a little bit of shoot. Okay. Yes, right. Yeah. Yeah.
it was fun. That was something to be a part of, so. Hopefully they can. Do it.
Unloading a turtle over myself.
Oh, it's fine. I just sit right here. Up there. Did you get my email? Did you get my email with the preliminary plat?
No, I also have shut the streets down for
That's not very,
crazy days.
not very technical.
Scheduled, which I don't see a problem, but I would like to be here.
All right, everyone, thank you for being here. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Time is now 7 o'clock. I will open the City Council regular meeting of July 12th. The Opens Meeting Act is posted on the rear wall next to the agendas. This time we'll have roll call.
Please vote for roll call. Six council members are present, Mayor.
Okay, moving on to the first item is a motion to adopt the current agenda for the July 12th, 2022 regular meeting. Are there any changes to the agenda? Councilman Legband.
If possible, I would like to move 26 to after public hearings. There are people from out of town. It'd be nice to, they present their information and then they can head out, back out of town.
Councilman Yerger.
Yes, and I would ask the council move item 25 to be after item 5, and then to move item 7 after item 6. So what that does is we'll be dealing with the subdivision agreement, the final plat and annexation in that order for the property on West Military.
So move 7 ahead of 6.
Move 7 ahead of 6, yes.
Okay.
And 25 up after item 5.
Okay. Are there any other changes? Okay, we'll amend the agenda. We'll do these one at a time here. We'll take first one would be move item 26 ahead of public or right after public hearings. So Councilman Sukram.
You need a second?
Yeah.
I'll second.
Okay. Cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Okay. Then I'd take a motion to amend and move 25 after number 5 and then 7 ahead of 6.
Yes.
Councilman Jensen.
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Okay. Councilman Sucrum,
I'll second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Okay, I'd take a motion to approve the agenda as amended. Councilman Jensen,
I'll make the motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Councilman Legband,
I'll second that.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Okay. Next on the agenda is mayor's comments. I have a few items tonight I'd like to mention. Number one, obviously Fremont was greatly affected by the 2019 floods. And I just wanted to point out a project that received federal funding to build housing within Fremont as a part of the funding. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, they sent Nebraska $10 million in federal funding, and Fremont, a project in Fremont will receive $2 million of that funding. It's the Fremont North Side Townhomes, Mesner Development near 29th and North Yeager Road would be 27 new rental units. So it's good to always see money coming into the community, especially for affordable housing. And so that's a great news to receive a couple $1 million for housing within Fremont. Also want to mention that the library will be closed the month of August. They were making preparations to move into the auditorium. And so that is a very big task for our library renovation project moving forward. And they're going to be moving over to the auditorium. So again, the month of August, the library will be closed for that. And I just ask for the public's patience in regards to that. We obviously have a very exciting project with our library expansion and renovation. And so it's important for them to be able to move and make those preparations. Also, just like to mention, it was a very successful John C. Fremont Days this weekend. Hopefully you got a chance to participate. We had most beautiful weather. Except, Thursday night we had a little rain, but the rest of the weekend was very nice. And I want to thank all the John C. Fremont board, all the work that they put in. We get obviously a lot of folks from out of town to be able to show off Fremont in our community. And it is definitely a team effort. And I want to, again, thank all those volunteers and those that were helped put on a great John C. Fremont Days this year. So thank you. That's all for my comments. We'll move on to public hearings. Item 2 is resolution 2022-108, recommending approval of a class 1 liquor license application of Bucks Axe Throwing LLC, doing business as Bucks Axe Throwing at 550 North Main Street. Go ahead, Tyler.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Received this application. Notice of this public hearing was published on July 1, 2022 in the Fremont Tribune. We have included supporting documents from the police and planning departments, providing a positive recommendation for this item. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Okay, any questions for staff at this point? Okay. I will open the public hearing. Any comments from the public?
Good evening. My name is Chris Becker. I'm the owner of that axe throwing place that was in front of your council October of last year. I also have the current lease at 550 where Bucks is trying to open a business right now. I think city council has received the litigation that my attorney has filed. We're just wanting you to consider postponing this vote. I'm a little worried that they're going to open. I'm still on the lease. I still have property in the building. And I don't want to be liable for anything that goes on in that building. We're going to go through litigation and see where it goes. And I just ask that you guys hold off on a vote until that time.
Hello, my name's Deanne Fetty, and I have 60% ownership in Bucks Axe Throwing. I was first made aware of this when Mr. Becker and my nephew came to me asking for insurance. My husband and I own an insurance agency in Omaha along with another partner. So that was my introduction to it. I had insurance lined up for them, and Mr. Becker said, I'm done. I'm not doing this. I'm walking away. I'm going to try to find somebody else to buy my interest. The corporate entity that they filed with the state of Nebraska was dissolved in April of last year. With this litigation pending, he has reinstated the corporate entity as of yesterday after filing suit. He basically walked out, told Jay he wasn't going to be a part of this anymore. He was unable to find anyone to take his place. I took a look at it. I cash flowed it. It looked good. I think it's a great opportunity for this city. And I said, let me step in. So we did. It is now fully insured with general liability, liquor liability, property, work comp, insurance. And the LLC has been active. Everything has been filed and submitted. The lease, when that axe throwing place dissolved, there was no that axe throwing place. So there was no lease. We have an active lease with the landlord with Bucks Axe Throwing. And Mitch Sawyer notified Mr. Becker that because that axe throwing dissolved, there's no lease. So we've had a lease since June of this year. We are almost ready to open. We are moving forward. And if any pending litigation indicates that we might owe Mr. Becker some funds, we will take care of that and we will move on. It will not impede the opening of this business. This is going to be a great opportunity for Fremont, not only for the business within the city, but people in Western Omaha. It's so much easier just to come to Fremont for this activity than it is to drive all the way downtown. And there are a couple of places in Omaha. One is around Midtown, but we've been there. It's not that great. Though there's some nice ones right downtown, but if you're in Western Omaha, it's much easier to come to Fremont. So we're not here to decide litigation. You approved it before. It's the same operation, same situation with this new entity that is currently active, has the active lease. So I'm asking that you allow us to move forward. Thank you.
Okay. Only have one opportunity, yeah, unless. Yeah.
Susan Jacobus, 1805 North D Street here in Fremont. I may be mistaken and legal will weigh in with you, I'm sure, but you can always decide to take a non-vote. In other words, let it ride and let the state decide. It is a good business regardless of who owns it, but I don't think it's up to the council to decide who's going to own it or the litigation part of it. However, if you've ever been to one of these events, it is a blast, but you better be able to handle the weight of the axe. I've done it a few times and done it out of state. It is a lot of fun, unless you've had too much tequila.
Seeing no other comments, I'll close the public hearing. Additional comments from council. Councilman Yerger.
Well, I understood that this was something that we sent to city legal with regards to the information that council members were provided before this meeting with regards to the suit. Realizing that, yes, what we're here to decide is whether or not to grant a liquor license and the protocols for whether and how we do that or don't do that, or would continue the item. And I'd be interested in having you opine on what we received from your perspective as to how we proceed. You sent us some sections of our city code that sort of outline it for us. And there seem to be some portions of that that are perhaps relevant for discussion or debate here, but I was interested in your direction as to which are the primary areas of concern or issues with regards to those city codes.
Certainly, Travis Jacob, city attorney. Without getting into my previous discussions with council, section 10-105 provides some criteria for the council to look at when analyzing whether to approve a liquor license or not. Generally speaking, litigation in and of itself is not a criteria on itself just to boldly deny the application. Issues with the lease could be a reason. If you go through the list, there's quite an extensive list, which is there's about 16 items on there. The last item says other information and data that may be reasonably be considered pertinent to the issuance of a license. So council could have reservations about this license based upon what has been received by council. We do have a duty to have a hearing within 45 days. We're conducting a hearing now. We can certainly continue the hearing to the next meeting if council wanted to do some more investigation. That would keep us under, I believe, my discussions with the clerk said August 1st is a 45-day deadline. That would keep us under that 45-day threshold. And we can decide to not make a recommendation. And in fact, if we fail to complete a hearing within 45 days, it would be deemed a non-recommendation. So those are the council's options. Hopefully that clears up all your questions, Councilman Yeager.
Well, as I was reading through some of that, it sounded like, or at least it looked like, the preponderance of any evidence relative to any of this is essentially on the applicant to make. And so what I heard tonight during the discussion here is we have perhaps two versions of a lease. I don't know whether or not that specifically matters to us relative to granting a liquor license to two applicants for the same location. But I guess having a lease is one of those things you have to have in order to have the business. It's not necessarily the determination for us giving the license, but it may be reason for us to have pause about taking action on something yet tonight. That was one of my concerns. And so we haven't been offered any of that information specifically here. What we've been given as council is a copy of the filing that was going to be made or whatever that was forwarded off. So, you know, I'm kind of with you, I think, relative to, unless there's a time constraint here, taking time to make sure that we understand all of this might be a good thing. If we put this off a meeting to make a final decision, I guess is kind of what I'm thinking. I'd like to hear from some of the other council members. I'm willing to make a motion to continue to the next meeting, but I'd like to hear what some of the other council members maybe think before we would do that.
Councilman Legband.
Yeah, I agree. Everything I've seen makes me want to pause, take a step back and take a good look at this. Even if we postpone it, the state liquor license can still grant them their liquor license without our approval, correct? If I may ask.
Yeah, certainly. They're going to wait the 45-day time limit before they do anything. But like I
Okay.
said, if we don't take any action within that time, it'll be deemed a non-recommendation.
I'm gonna probably side with Brad here and just, I think it's a good time to take a step back and make sure we have our ducks in a row so we don't get ourselves in trouble.
Councilman Ellis.
So legal, there's, if we wait the 45 days and it's essentially a non-recommendation, that's essentially a no, right?
Wouldn't necessarily be deemed a denial.
Okay, but the state then has the ability to override our non-recommendation and say, yes, we'll give the license?
Correct.
Okay, they do. Okay, I think I'm falling behind or along with everyone else here. I really don't want to discourage this business. I want an axe throwing business downtown. I want as many as we can, but I think we need to pause and let us do a little bit more investigating and also give the plaintiffs time to resolve the issue before you come back for it. So I'd be in that court as well.
Councilman Jensen.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Councilman Ellis. So that was kind of my thought, was to give the plaintiff and the defendants, give them a chance to see if they can come to some kind of resolution. But we can certainly wait the 2 weeks.
Councilwoman Ganem.
And the 2 weeks would still be within the 45 days, correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay.
You said August 1, right? Okay. Okay, any other comments from council? If not, I would take a motion. Councilman Yerger,
Well, I too am looking forward to them locating here as a business, but I'm going to make the motion to continue this to the next meeting so that we can hopefully have some resolution or have good understanding of what our obligations and opportunities are relative to this. So make a motion to continue the next meeting.
Councilwoman Ganem,
Second the motion.
okay, cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor. Can I interject for a moment? We opened and closed the public hearing where we also needed to continue the public hearing as well.
I think by continuing the item, in
Okay.
essence, continued it.
All right, thank you.
Moving on to item 3, as a resolution 2022-109 recommending approval of a Class D liquor license application of 23rd Street Petroleum LLC doing business as MP Mart 16 at 1156 West 23rd Street. Go ahead.
Mayor and council, this notice for this public hearing was also published July 1. My staff report indicated that we did not have the report for the police department. That did come in on Friday, and so you do have the information if you so desire to move forward and approve this tonight. The same could be said for item 4 on the agenda. Both the reports for the planning and police departments are included. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Any questions for staff? Okay, I'll now open the public hearing.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. My name is Sean Kelly, 2804 South 87th Avenue, Omaha, Nebraska. Appearing this evening on behalf of the applicant, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant? Councilman Legband?
Yeah, you have mini marts like this all over Nebraska, correct?
That's correct. So the applicant has over 11 locations across Nebraska.
And there's never been any problems or anything before, so.
No,
I
I mean, in fairness, there have been some citations, 5 in total over 22 licensed years of all those locations, which is not unusual for a retailer. But no, I would say generally the applicant has a very good record.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments from the public on this item? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Additional comments from council? Councilman Yerger?
I don't have any opposition to the application. Would like to note for the record so that we're not setting any precedents, as the clerk indicated, this information that was provided to us for the application was not complete, but it is complete as of Friday. However, that doesn't meet the city council agenda policy criteria. But nonetheless, I'd make a motion to approve resolution 2022-109 without precedent.
Okay, Councilman Sukram,
I would second that.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Item 4, resolution 2022-110, recommending approval of Class D liquor license application of Bell Street Petroleum LLC doing business as MP Mart 15 at 2010 North Bell Street. This is same staff report, same applicant. If there's any questions for the clerk on this item. Okay, seeing none, I'll open the public hearing.
Mayor, members of the council, Sean Kelly, 2804 South 87th Avenue, Omaha, on behalf of the applicant. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Any other comments from the public? I'll close the public hearing. Any additional comments from council, Councilman Yerger?
Unless there are some without precedent, I would make a motion to approve resolution 2022-110.
Okay, Councilman Sukram,
I'll second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Moving on to item 5. Ordinance 5622 approving change of zone from SC suburban commercial to AR auto urban residential on properties generally located between Bell Street, Military Avenue, 8th Street and C Street. This would be for first reading.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council, Jennifer Dam, Planning Director. This is a request for a change of zone by myself, the Planning Director, for the area generally bounded east of City Hall between Military and 8th Street, all the way over to Bell Street. The original proposal also included the parking lot areas, which are zoned suburban commercial. The Planning Commission in their recommendation recommended to leave the parking lots and the house that's immediately to the east as suburban commercial. The properties within this area are developed with houses. Residential uses are the predominant use. Only 3 properties within the roughly 6.5 block area are used for office type uses. And that included the house immediately adjacent to City Hall. Those large homes in this area give Fremont a historic character and sense of place. In fact, the Barnard Park Historic District incorporates approximately 3 blocks, and 70% of the houses in that area are considered contributing to that National Register District. The future land use of the current comprehensive plan identifies the land use for this area as residential, as does the draft future land use map of the update to the comprehensive plan. Prior to the adoption of our current UDC, the corridor was zoned SC/UC, which was a mixed-use urban corridor with a special corridor overlay district. And that's how the Loving Homes office was approved as an office. There was a point-based performance system, and if there was a proposal that made a certain number of points, then it could be used for an office type use. When the UDC was updated, this was changed to suburban commercial, and we do not have a special overlay district like that at this time. In the suburban commercial district, a number of uses are allowed. I've spelled those out in the staff report. They include private clubs, public assembly, health club, daycare services, indoor commercial amusement, like the axe throwing place, animal grooming, ATMs, auto sales and service, financial institutions, laundromats, mixed use office, restaurant, retail sales, and so forth. The SC zoning allows commercial uses, but it also allows those properties to be torn down and converted to those type of commercial uses. And that's why I'm requesting this particular change of zone, is to retain the character of the particular area. The existing commercial uses in the area would become non-conforming uses. They'd be allowed to continue without a problem. And we do have a special use permit currently that if something happened to those non-conforming uses, they could apply for a conditional use permit to allow them to continue. So there would not be a negative impact on those existing businesses. The Planning Commission held 2 public hearings on this. The first was in May. There were objections by 2 of the property owners, and they wanted some time to think about and consider that. In June at the public hearing, those 2 residents testified again, as well as 1 in favor of the proposal. There were questions about how the change of zone might impact property taxes. I talked to the county assessor, and she indicated that the property taxes are based on the value of the property, which in this case is based how they're used. If you look at the property assessor's website, all of the properties in this area except Loving Hands or Loving Homes are described as single-family residential uses, even those that are multifamily for tax purposes. She indicated that there would not be an impact on the taxation of the properties. As I mentioned, the Planning Commission did recommend a separate boundary, and that's what's outlined in the ordinance. It left the house immediately next door in the parking lot as suburban commercial, and then the area, the houses that face Union Street to the east to Bell, as they recommended approval as the auto urban residential. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff? Councilman Yerger?
So I understand what you're attempting to do, and we toured this area before, and a lot of the properties that are not located on Military, for example, it seems perfectly reasonable that these would be going to AR and be residential properties. That's what they are. I am concerned, though, about the discussion that you had relative to the business properties that are on Military. And hearing that the Planning Commission was allowed for one of the original objectors, because I think he objected as well. And now his exemption was essentially granted, so he gets to stay suburban commercial. But the other business, Loving.
Yeah,
Home,
Loving Homes did not object.
they wrote several objection letters to council.
That was not Loving Homes. That's a property owner,
Oh, excuse me,
Mr. Ackerman.
That was a
and-
different,
and-
that was different.
Right, and he has a duplex. And his property is within the historic district. It's on a corner. It takes access off of, I think it's Platt Street. I could be wrong. But the way the property is currently developed, it would be very difficult to use as any other use, because there's not room to get a driveway in behind the house and then have parking.
Okay, I noticed in his letter, he said something about he no longer has the option of running the business described above. So that's probably what was confusing me, but nevertheless.
And
We either have those 2 or 3 commercial properties that are swept
Right.
into this. And your statement was that they won't be impacted in the future. And I want to be clear on whether or not they would be. So
Right,
they would become non-conforming.
right.
If they were to burn down or be destroyed for whatever reason, they would be able to rebuild what they had, but not expand beyond what they had. Is that correct?
They could rebuild with approval from the council of a conditional use permit, which then gives you the ability to help dictate the design of how that would be rebuilt. So it would be something consistent with the existing neighborhood. Under the current SC zoning, I could go buy up 4 properties over there, tear them down and put in a convenience store. And I would argue that that is very inconsistent with the development of the area. It would destroy the historic character of the area. We would probably lose the historic district from the National Register. And my personal thought is that that would be a strong negative for the city of Fremont.
Okay, so the one property next door to City Hall here gets to keep its designation because it's adjacent already to commercial property. That was the rationale for the Planning Commission? to keep
That's,
that?
my understanding is it's being used as kind of a combination home office now when the occupant is in town. And it's adjacent to City Hall, and the thought was that it made sense to leave that as
Because-
suburban commercial.
But because Loving Homes is a few blocks down the street, they succumb to having to follow the conditional use permit, special use permit route in the future.
That's correct. That's correct. And I wouldn't recommend.
But they didn't object.
I wouldn't recommend, they did not object. I would not recommend carving out just a lot or 2.
No, that's my question was going to spot zoning. That's why I was asking, because we're making everything but this building. And now, except for the building next door, we're making everything else AR. And
This building is zoned downtown commercial, but the parking lots behind us are zoned suburban commercial.
right, so we're changing that.
We're recommending a change to that. I'm not so concerned about that. With the update of the zoning regulations, there's a recommendation that public properties be changed to what will become a new zoning district, will recognize public, semi-public. So the parking lots in City Hall will be caught up with that.
And then you made mention to the new consultant's recommendations. And so the AR zoning that you have before us tonight is essentially what they're going to be having. They're changing theirs. I realize they don't call them AR anymore. They're going to be something that's very similar, though,
Right.
to what would be R4. R3 or
Probably an
R4?
R3.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff on this item? Thank you. Comments from the public? Open the public hearing. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Any additional comments from council? Ordinance 5622. If there are no other comments, I'd take a motion to introduce and hold first reading. Councilman Legband.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to hold first reading of ordinance 5622.
Councilman Sukram.
I would second that.
Okay, cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
We'll now have first reading.
An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, amending ordinance number 5427 as it pertains to the zoning map to rezone the property generally located between Bell Street, Military Avenue, 8th Street, and C Streets from SC Suburban Commercial to AR Auto Urban Residential, providing for repeal of ordinances in conflict we are herewith, providing for severability and providing an effective date on first reading.
Okay, moving on to item 25. Resolution 2022-120 approving Copperhead subdivision agreement for property generally located at the northwest corner of West Military Avenue and Business Park Drive.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, Jennifer Dam, Planning Director. This is the subdivision agreement that is associated with the Copperhead subdivision, the next item on the agenda. It's also associated with a request for annexation. The subdivision agreement is pretty straightforward and pretty standard. It spells out which entities are responsible for which costs of infrastructure in the development. And I would be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, questions for staff on the subdivision agreement? Councilman Yerger.
I'm wondering if you can just give me a little bit of clarification on the agreements discussion of stormwater detention facilities. My paraphrase is that the developer is the lead agent and they do the construction and pays for the cost of those detention facilities, but then the city's going to take those over. Is that right?
I'll defer to council.
And my reason for asking that, if I'm paraphrasing that accurately, is it also goes on to say that the city shall own and maintain the detention facilities within the easement of, in conjunction with the YMCA, and shall assume the developer's responsibilities in connection with the stormwater easement. And I'm wondering why the city would assume developers' responsibilities and what you can tell me about the placement of these with regards to it's in this detention area is going to be in the easement area. And if it wasn't, would we be taking it over if it was on the applicant's property? It's that we're building this in the easement and therefore we're going to take it over. We're going to own and be responsible for the stormwater detention area.
As I'm looking,
And I want to, if I'm reading that correctly.
as I'm looking at Exhibit B, the detention facility appears to be within the West Military Avenue right of way, or immediately adjacent to the West Military Avenue right of way.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well. So it looks like it's
So I think that
it's
that's
being moved into city property.
Probably the rationale.
They're gonna do the work. We're gonna own and take care of it after the fact.
Yep, and if you look at paragraph 4 on page 8, under the apportionment of costs, that just goes to developer being responsible for constructing the infrastructure. And then the city will take it over after it's constructed.
So assuming that the detention area is adequate, no problem. If the detention area as it's designed for whatever reason doesn't prove to be adequate, the responsibility will be on the city because we've absorbed the developer's responsibilities in their entirety once we take it over.
The construction will be done, designed by a licensed engineer that complies with the city specifications. So
we should have no problem assuming the responsibilities.
we would need to assume the responsibility after it's constructed anyway.
Thanks.
Any other questions for staff? Okay. All right, comments from the public. Okay. Seeing none, any comments from council? I don't think it was this was new business at this point. Yep. Councilman Yerger.
I did have one other question that I failed to ask staff. So there was no estimate of infrastructure cost here, as I understood, though, in the subdivision agreement, we have to provide the intersections as well as some of the other infrastructure for which will be paid. And I'm wondering, is there any estimate of what that infrastructure cost is going to be with regards to this?
I do not have an estimate of what those costs are going to be. It has been our standard practice, the way this is written, to pay for the oversizing of intersections and utility infrastructure. I don't know, like, that information was not provided to me on the
Okay.
specific costs of that. I know that our council is in the process of developing a standardized subdivision agreement, and we'll have policy discussions regarding cost sharing in the future.
Thank you.
Okay, any additional comments from council? If there are none, I take a motion to approve. Councilman Jensen.
Yeah, if there's no additional comments, I'll make the motion to approve resolution 2022-120.
Councilman Legband,
I will second that.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Moving on to item 7, resolution 2022-111 approving Copperhead final plat consisting of 19 lots on property generally located at the northwest corner of West Military Avenue and Business Park Drive.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, Jennifer Dam, Planning Director. This is the final plat that is associated with the subdivision agreement that was just approved. It's also associated with the next item, which is the annexation. This is consistent with the preliminary plat, the comprehensive plan. It's zoned light industrial. And again, it's associated with a request to annex the area. The Planning Commission recommended approval unanimously, and staff recommends approval as well.
Okay. Councilman Sukram. Okay.
Sorry.
Questions for staff on the plat? Councilman Yerger.
No real questions on the plat. I just wanted to confirm my reason for moving these. We agreed to on a discussion slightly earlier today. Order of process is subdivision agreements necessary for the final plat. Final plat's necessary before any annexation considerations. Agree?
Final plat and annexation can go either way. But, you know, this order is fine. The subdivision agreement doesn't have a public hearing, so that's why it fell under
No.
new business on the agenda.
I
So, yeah, the
understand
order
the way
is fine.
the agenda was structured, but sequentially, and I might disagree somewhat with your statement relative to, but I won't quibble about Nebraska State Statute 183301 and final plat Fremont Municipal Code 11-31602 that basically outlines the sequence of events. But nevertheless, we're up to the plat, and I have no objections to going to final reading on the plat.
Okay. I'll open the public hearing. Okay, seeing no comments, I'll close the public hearing. Any additional comments from council? If there are none, I take a motion in regards to this item. Councilman Sukram.
I'll make a motion on resolution 2022-111 for approval.
Councilman Yerger.
Second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Moving on to item 6, ordinance 5623 to approve voluntary annexation of Copperhead subdivision generally located at the northwest corner of West Military Avenue and Business Park Drive.
Mayor, members of the council, Jennifer Dam, Planning Director. This is the annexation that's associated with the other two requests. Under Nebraska statute, annexations must have all 3 readings of the ordinance. The Planning Commission recommended approval, as does staff.
Okay. Questions for staff? Thank you. I'll open the public hearing, ordinance 5623. Any comments from the public? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Any additional comments from council? Councilman Yerger.
So as I understand, state statute, legal, both 16-117, 4 and 7, which would seem to yield their guidance that we don't need a lot of detail, but 16-120 says that we need to handle this within a year. We're doing it now. We're going to build this, I assume, whatever infrastructure we're involved in having to do, the intersections and the like, and we're supposed to do that as soon as practical. I'm assuming we didn't know about this and it wasn't budgeted for us to do this work at this time. So is there an estimate of, you said we have no estimate of the cost. Do you have an estimate of when we'll be providing services? It will be under this budget, I assume.
The developer will, I imagine this fall, start the development and start the installation of the infrastructure. And perhaps finance can provide information on how the city's share of it is handled.
Dan Global, interim city, finance director. Typically, those are constructed and paid for by the developer. And then after that, we do receive a bill from the developer for those intersections. I'm looking now on the capital improvement plan to see if we have anything just generic for intersections. We do. Okay. We got confirmation that we do, so we should have appropriation for that.
Thank you.
There's no other comments. I take a motion to introduce and hold first reading of ordinance 5623. Councilman Legband.
Seeing no objections or comments, I make a motion to hold first reading of ordinance 5623.
Councilwoman Ganem.
Second.
Okay. Cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
We'll now introduce and hold first reading.
An ordinance in the city of Fremont, Nebraska, annexing by voluntary petition property generally located at the northwest corner of Military Avenue and Business Park Drive, Dodge County, Nebraska, and extending the corporate limits to include said real estate, providing for repeal of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for severability, and providing an effective date on first reading.
Next will be item 26. This is our 2021 audit report presentation. You can go ahead whenever you're ready.
Perfect. Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Colby Jensen. I'm an audit senior manager, formerly with BKD, effective June 1st. We became Forvis. We merged with another regional firm to now become a top 8 accounting firm here located in the state of Nebraska. I'm based out of our Omaha office and have worked primarily with Jody and Dan and Kristen and the finance team to help prepare for the financial statement audit. Tonight, I'm going to go over the results of the audit and the process that we went through as we performed not only the financial statement audit, but also the compliance audit under the Uniform Grant Guidance, specifically related to the federal funds that the city received and expended. The document that I'm covering today is actually the required communication that is sent to both management and of course those charged here with governance. It outlines again that we perform that financial statement audit and compliance audit within the generally accepted auditing standards and the government auditing standards. In addition, in relation to this testing that we perform, we determine what areas are more susceptible to risk related to the city. So we determine what are some unusual or significant transactions that are in place. We have interviews with different city personnel and those, of course, charged with governance to determine if there's any particular items that we need to pay particular attention to. In addition, we also perform limited testing on the internal controls and processes and procedures in place throughout the fiscal year. So that would be October of 2020 through September of 2021 to determine if there's any inconsistencies or errors noted within those internal controls not being followed or inconsistencies. As we obtain that information, we then establish scopes, which we use to determine where we're going to guide our testing for the audit procedures. Just to make you aware, an audit does not relieve those here or management charged with governance from their responsibility of the information contained within the financial statements. In addition, our audit does not perform a test of every transaction that the city enters into. We do, again, use those scopes based on that risk assessment to select material transactions and test the validity and accuracy of the financial reporting in relation to those transactions. Specifically at the bottom of this letter, I want to go ahead and mention a few items. One calls attention to the city's significant accounting policies, which are located in Note A of the financial statements or the financial statement report. That provides a general overview of the information on how the city accounts for certain transactions or reports items within the financial statements. In addition, there's a section there about alternative accounting treatments. Due to the city having the utility funds, the city has elected to use regulatory accounting, which is accepted and generally consistent with other utility departments as well, which allows you to offset some of those revenues and expenses, again, to help offset some of those costs. So you don't have as significant fluctuations with some of those charges that are being assessed to residents and customers. On page 2 of this document, it then goes into some judgments and accounting estimates that specifically notes there are estimates and judgments that were considered by management in order to determine what balances should be reported on the financial statements. Those include the unbilled utility receivable balances, along with some allowance for accounts receivables and any self-insurance and workers' compensation claims. At the bottom of page 2 of this document, it mentions audit adjustments. As we perform our audit testing, we may suggest that audit entries be recorded. We then discuss those with city management and they determine whether or not they want to record those transactions or pass on recording. There were several entries that we proposed that the city did elect to post, and there were also a few minor transactions in which the city elected not to post. Those are in detail and summarized at the bottom of this packet, and specifically the items that were elected not to be recorded related to items that came up late in the audit process and determined were immaterial to the financial statements as a whole and would not be deemed to mislead the users of the financial statements. On page 3, we talk about some other material communications. The second bullet point there is really the one that I want to touch base on. I mentioned that we do some limited procedures as far as internal controls over the financial reporting as well as compliance. And as we look at that process, we determine whether or not any potential internal controls would rise to the level of a deficiency, which is your lowest level internal control deficiency, which next would be a significant deficiency, and then the highest, I guess, deficiency level would be kind of your material weakness. And that's really the highest level. You don't want to see those within an audit report. I'm happy to announce that there were no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in the testing over the financial statements or the compliance. There were minor deficiency in relation to the audit adjustments. Anytime audit adjustments are proposed, we have to consider those from an internal control standpoint, but nothing that would be required to be reported or at that level of a significant deficiency or material weakness. Within the financial statement document itself, there are actually 3 audit reports. The first is the financial statement or the opinion over the financial statements. And again, as referenced in this document, we provided our procedures and performed those within generally accepted auditing standards. And we issued a clean or an unmodified opinion on the financial statement, stating that they're free from material misstatement. In addition, our second opinion is over the internal control over financial reporting and compliance with laws and regulations. Again, we've issued an unmodified or clean audit opinion. There were no reportable instances of significant internal controls over financial reporting that needed to be further escalated or reviewed or in relation to laws or regulations. Our last opinion then is over the report on compliance of the major federal award program and the compliance requirements set forth by the Uniform Grant Guidance. This year, we tested the city's Corona Relief Virus funds, which were about 1.6 million of the 3 million of federal expenditures that the city reported. And again, we're happy to announce that there were no reportable findings in internal controls or over compliance with the use of those funds. So we've issued a clean or unmodified opinion in relation to the federal funds as well. The last item that I just want to go ahead and mention in this document relates to an upcoming standard, GASB 87, specifically related to leases. Effective for the fiscal year ending September 30th of 2022, the city would be required to adopt and implement this standard It would require city finance to review significant amounts of agreements and contracts to determine whether or not there are any lease components or the right to use any assets. If those items were to occur or be contained within those agreements, the city would be required to record assets known as right to use assets and an offsetting liability on the books. In addition, the counterpart of that, as well as if the city is leasing any property, equipment and so forth to outside parties, those would need to be considered as well and recorded as receivables and what we would consider to be a deferred inflow of resources or future revenue collections. So it would have an impact to the city's balance sheet per se. We've started implementing that with other organizations, not-for-profits and governments, and it is quite time-consuming to go through that process. And so we've started preliminary preparations with the finance department to help them through that process as they start planning for that new implementation. Dan will provide an overview of the financial statement results or the financial statement figures, but I'm happy to answer any specific questions related to the audit or audit process.
Any questions? Councilman Yerger?
Yeah, just some procedural questions with regards to your audit and its scope. I'm interested in understanding whether or not you were apprised of or knew that the city had been under review by the state and that we received an APA report in May of 2021. Were you aware of that report?
Can you be more specific?
It was a specific audit that the state did with regards to some payments related to severance compensations and the like. And we were cited in that report on at least 4 or 5 different areas of needing to do some work relative to our internal controls. And I'm wondering whether or not you had privy to that and whether that was a consideration in the scope of your assessment of internal controls of the city, because apparently their findings were that we needed some areas of improvement that were there. That was their recommendations. And I thought I heard you say you didn't find any. So were you aware of their report and their findings and subsequent changes that were made were what you considered, or you didn't know about that report? I'm just interested in whether or not you were aware.
No, city finance was forthcoming with that information once they received the audit report. They did pass that along to not only myself, but the partner, Chris Linder, on the engagement. So we were both able to review that. I believe that transaction happened before BKD at the time took over the audit roles and responsibilities with the city. So that auditing of those severance agreements or those packages were from a predecessor auditor, but we did consider those in our risk assessment process. We weren't required under our responsibilities as the auditor to go back and perform an additional audit procedure.
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting that you had to go back in history you were doing the previous year. I just wanted to make sure that the things that were necessary relative to those findings were things that you then also looked at in rendering an opinion that were good relative to our internal controls, because we responded to those.
Mm-hmm.
And your findings are that we apparently have done whatever was necessary. So you gave a different report.
Correct.
Okay. Earlier, you also said that there were some, forget your exact language, things that were posted or not posted for adjustment or whatever. In essence,
sure. These
are some preliminary findings that you had that you recommended some things be done, and the city could either take them up or not. And my familiarity from being in the corporate world before is there are many preliminary findings often that go back and forth for dialogue between the auditor and the company or the city in this regard. And they may or may not be all of those that you just alluded to there about posting of actual journal entries. I assume that there were other potential findings or whatever that were also discussed back and forth that ultimately, because of resolution, didn't make the final report. Would that be accurate?
To an extent,
Because
yes.
they were deemed to be not major, but they were consulted and the city responded.
Again, we have a materiality threshold, so we don't obtain absolute assurance, just reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free from material misstatement. So there may be discrepancies and balances that the city reports compared to what our audit procedures entail. If those are under that acceptable threshold, those are not items that we bring forth and discuss with management unless we see those being a bigger indication of a potential internal control deficiency or an area for process improvement. For the areas that are deemed to be material, yes, we discuss those with management and they can choose whether or not they'd like to post or pass on those adjustments. As part of considerations, not only just here at the city, but other governmental entities that I help with their audit procedures, some of the items that they consider are, will it mislead the users of the financial statements? What's the overall impact to the financial statements as far as like a percentage of your financial statement line item or assets and liabilities? Would it impact any debt covenants or requirements as far as ratios? And then also from a timing standpoint, this year's audit, just due with some of the changes in finance as well as the increase in federal funding and additional items that occurred, the timing was pushed back a little bit. And so sometimes that can be a consideration as well from an administrative standpoint and where you're at in the audit process. So I believe on the schedule of past adjustments, you'll see that the largest impact to a financial statement line item was 8%. Most of the impacts of those past adjustments were much less than that.
Okay, my last question is just this. This originally appeared on the council's agenda back in May.
Sure.
But it just reappeared now. And we were told at the time it was because there were considerable communications that still needed to go back and forth between the auditor to resolve all of this, which was the essence from my previous question as to, well, then how many of those were there? It took several weeks for us to get those resolved. Those are the preliminary findings that you worked through during that timeframe, I assume, with the city. Is that accurate?
Correct. Obtaining some final resolution as relation to open items, and then audit also requires some additional communication, not only with legal, but other personnel within the city to ensure that we have accurate information as of our issuance date.
Thank you.
Councilman Ellis.
Yeah, I just want to play off of that a little bit. I've been on council. This is my fourth year, my fourth audit. It seems like they're getting later and later. I mean, the first one we saw was in January, February. Is there a reason why this one took so long to get back to us? Besides was there a delay on our side for as far as getting back with you, or why was that?
I would say there are multiple reasons. Part of that would be that there was a transition in, not necessarily a transition, but the finance director was also managing the interim city administrator role, which is about the time of the audit. And we had become aware of that from the get-go. And I believe the city finance department had even considered potential options as far as outsourcing accounting to help with the audit process, which was just deemed, I believe, to be maybe not the best decision in the essence of the audit. And so I think that that transition or those dual roles within finance caused some of the delay. In addition to that, the federal funding, COVID federal funding was a significant piece. So there was a lot of back and forth between us and the finance department to ensure that those expenditures were being properly reported and accounted for. So I think some of the transition, as well as some of the unique items that came up throughout the year between COVID, the polar vortex and so forth, led to the delay.
Your previous predecessors have described us before as an abundance of riches. How would you describe our city's financial situation right now?
Well, I definitely think looking at the city as a whole, there's significant economic growth and business development going on. You guys are in a great place as far as bringing on larger businesses, making infrastructure changes. And with Omaha being so close, I feel like it's so easy to want to come to Fremont and partake in what's going on here and the activities that are here. I definitely would say if you look at the financial statements, you'll see that the city of Fremont has continued to have a positive financial outlook. You can see that the growth of the city is there. And I think that from the testing that we've done, it appears that finance and the city are properly managing those funds and using those to the community's best ability.
You wouldn't say we're excessive in our budget, not budget, but money that we have in the reserves?
I mean, that is a decision for management and those charged with governance. So I'm going to just stay mute to that point.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Ganem.
No, at least we are solid financially, and that's what you want. You don't want to be spending more money than what you bring in. So that is a help. But I just wondered, and reading the report and certainly listening to you as well, were there any material conditions city council should be aware of that didn't maybe reflect or that you saw?
Nothing from a material standpoint that would be required to be reported or anything that us as the audit firm would communicate to those here today. There are also other suggestions that we make directly to city management. These can be specific items such as adoption of standards, thinking forward, or if we notice that, I think one of them was making sure somebody had access to a report. So suggestions like that do come up that wouldn't rise to the level of reporting to this group. We
Okay,
can share
thank
that
you.
information with you though, if you'd like.
Okay, thank you. Certainly appreciate it.
Thank you for your presentation. Thank you. Any comments from the public on the audit? Okay. Seeing none, I'd take a motion to receive the 2021 audit report. Councilman Legband,
I make a motion to receive.
Councilwoman Ganem,
Second the motion.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Moving on to the consent agenda, all items in the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or a citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Are there any items to be removed from the consent agenda by council staff or the public? Councilman Yurger.
I'd like to have some discussion on item 11, 16. And before I would ask, do you know whether the police officer appointments are in the room tonight or not?
I believe we have one, yes.
Then I would like to take
Okay.
item 21 off so that they could be recognized.
Okay, any other items? Okay, Councilman Ellis. Okay. Councilman Yurger, can you?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Susan Jacobus, 1805 Northeast Street here in Fremont. I have a question on number 15, and I'd also like to have number 17 removed, just for minor questions. Thank you.
I would take a motion to approve the consent agenda items 8, 10, 12 through 14, 18 through 20, and 22. Councilman Legband.
I make a motion to approve consent agenda numbers 8, 10, 12, 13, 14, 18, 19, 20, and 22.
Councilman Sukram.
I'll second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Okay, item 9 would be receive report of the treasury. We'll now have staff report from our city administrator.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Jody Sanders, city administrator, and still your treasurer. You have attached the monthly report of the treasury. These are the bank account balances in the various banks that the city and the utilities are have on deposit. So I'll accept any questions.
Councilman Ellis.
Just one simple one. I just thought I'd ask this as an opportunity for the citizens. Where are we with the ARPA funds? I know we've received one. Have we received the other one yet?
No, we've not received the second tranche yet.
Were we supposed to have received it by now?
My understanding is that no other communities in Nebraska have received it from the state yet either.
Okay, state has not released them yet.
Correct.
Thank you.
Councilman Yurger.
Along with that, and I don't know if this is the appropriate place, Jody, but you and I've talked about this. And so when we get statements of the report of the treasury, and we certainly probably won't see them in our claims reports, where will I ultimately see the receipts that we are taking in from Tech Park property sales? where will those show up and be shown to council? We've apparently sold some lots. Money should be in the bank. Where do I see that?
Actually, you'll see those in item number 16 that was also pulled from the consent agenda. We made sure that those were showing they are received into the LB 840 fund that would be at First State Bank. So it would be the sales tax money market account at First State Bank. So on the report of the Treasury, that whole balance is there, but it includes the amounts that were received for the properties at the tech park.
When those amounts come in, they come through a general treasury account and get transferred into LB 840, or we just record directly into LB 840?
They get deposited directly into the LB 840, or actually the sales tax money market account.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, I would take a motion to receive the report of the Treasury. Councilman Legband,
Make a motion to receive the report of the Treasury.
Councilman Sukram,
I'll second.
cast your votes.
Councilmember Yerger. Thank you. Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Moving on to item 11, resolution 2022-112, approving aerial applicator agreement with TRI Rotor and Frontier Cooperative Corporation.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, Dave Codican, Director of Public Works. This item is to approve the aerial applicator or crop duster agreement with TRI Rotor and Frontier Co-op so that they can operate out of the Fremont Airport. There is a one-time fee for this agreement of $1,500, which is paid to the city which allows them to operate there.
Okay, questions for staff? Councilman Yerger.
I only pulled this off, Dave, because the resolution that we have before us doesn't recognize this. Your staff report does. The agreement intimates it that we need proof of insurance. It's mentioned in the agreement at paragraph 9 and 12. We don't have said insurance policy in our agreement. I'm thinking that we need to have that as a condition of our approval of this resolution. And I'm wondering about your thoughts. I realize it's in the contract, council, or it's in the agreement that they have to provide insurance in paragraph 9 and 12.
I'm seeing a certificate of insurance. Is that the right?
Oh, well, maybe my packet's incomplete. I don't. Oh, maybe I do have it.
Yes, there's an accord statement in there. and
Okay,
then there's a
we
statement
have
from
it, but it's not referenced in the agreement. But as long as we have it, I guess I'll yield. Thanks.
Councilman Ellis.
This is a question for finance. I noticed in the resolution of the staff report, it says the applicant will pay $1,500 fee into the airport fund at the time of occupancy. It's not traditional here in the city that anytime a fund is received, that it goes into a very unique, when the ambulance or the fire department receives funds for services rendered, it goes into the general. Why is this one different than anything else? Why doesn't that $1,500 go into the general account?
Dan Goebel, interim finance director. This is a special revenue fund. And so the airport fund would directly receive this $1,500 into that. The general fund where the ambulance receipts is more general in nature.
But there's a lot of money that comes in from the city from all the different locations, and it all kind of goes into the general fund.
If it's a general fund department, correct.
But the airport is not a general fund?
The airport has its own fund.
That's the first I've heard of that, but okay. Why does it have its own fund?
It's a special revenue fund. It's supposed to be primarily self-supporting.
Okay, so the inspection department has, they're self-supporting, but they don't have a separate fund, do they, or do they?
They do not. They're part of the general fund.
So we've got some differences here. Why doesn't the inspection department have its own fund that the money goes into and they can use that for the the city inspection fund.
Jody Sanders, City Administrator. The difference between those is nearly all first-class cities would have an inspections department because that's a governmental function. Not all have an airport. And it's not so that the airport, the other reason why and this was done before Dan and I started, the reason why it's in its own fund, separate and apart from the general fund, is so that you as council have some kind of assurance, and the public as some assurance that the general fund does not subsidize the airport by and large. Yes, we used reserves to build the terminal, but other than that, it is a standalone function and has been since before Dan and I got here.
Okay, I'm having a major issue with that because we did subsidize the airport. We dropped $2 million into the airport out of the city's money, out of money that came from citizens. We subsidized the airport.
That would be a true statement, but that was done with council approval and was very much an advertised, if you will, conversation. It wasn't, if it was, quote, buried in the general fund, we could have accomplished that and never told you. We could have done that. We would not do that, but we could have done that. And that's why those funds are separate as a special revenue fund, is so that there's no understanding that the city general fund is subsidizing other than, as I mentioned, the $2 million.
Okay, questions for staff? Guess any comments from the public at this point? Seeing none, I'd take a motion in regards to this item. Councilman Yerger.
Make a motion to approve resolution 2022-112.
Councilman Legman,
I'll second that.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Okay, item 15 is resolution 2022-115, approving the request of the Fremont Area Chamber of Commerce to use the upper level, the Cabbage parking lot, and approve the application for a special designated permit. This taken off by a constituent. I would have the constituent come up and ask the question on this item.
Susan Jacobus, 1805 Northeast Street, Fremont. The question I had, now that you've passed a parking ordinance and you're using this parking areas for the 505, how will this play into it when you have roughly 25 to 40 vehicles, if 505 is at full capacity, parked in this structure? Because right now, during the course of any given day, that area is almost full on the bottom half and there are vehicles on the top. So how are you going to police that? Or is this going to be something that you'll have special allowance to ticket or tag or say you need to move them? That was my only question. How does this play into the use of 505 in the downtown parking areas to have 72-hour plus parking? At what point do you tag or put signs up and say nobody can park there because there's going to be a public use? Because now that this is passed, this may be an issue. Just wanted an answer to that question. Thank you.
Okay. Any comments from council on this item? Councilman Yerger.
Well, I did have a question. It's kind of similar to that one, but a little bit different. As I understand this application, this is for the roof, not the covered parking area, and they've been here numerous years. So it's in that regard, this is an old type of designated permit. I do have that and did have that a similar thought relative to that, though. If in fact we had exceeded the amount of space in the lower covered parking garage and people were parking on the roof, whether they're county people or 505 people or people that would otherwise be parked on the street, like on John C. Fremont days, you couldn't park on the street at certain times because of the parade and the car show. So where would those people park if they normally park in the street? If there isn't room in the covered, they would have to be on the roof. So I did have a question I wrote down for myself. Well, what will be the priority going forward? This is a city parking lot. So is our commitment to whoever we assign first, or to those tenants that we've now provided parking to through our previous parking ordinance? I'm not sure that I fully understand what the priority there will be. I assume the city's going to keep its authority over the parking garage, including the roof. And if the parking is needed for whatever, we won't be having some of these events, would be my guess. I don't know. Well, if there's an answer to that, if legal has an answer to that relative to the commitments we made in the parking ordinance, I think that's kind of a tantamount to the question asked by the member of the public here.
Right, for a special designated license, the city is authorized to block off sections of parking, and that would be to the exclusion of people that can legally park there. The parking ordinance doesn't grant a citizen the right to prevent the city from authorizing special designated licenses.
So theoretically, it's possible that if this was all taken into account and they were having a special event, well, we did have a special event at John C. Fremont Days, the barbecue, whatever, was on the roof. So we closed that. And if we had a lot of people parking that were tenants, they couldn't park there. They couldn't maybe park downstairs because they didn't have access, and I don't know how they got in and out, although there were cars there. Those streets were closed. Main Street was closed for both the car show and the parade. So the only places that those tenants can park would be the other downtown lots, like on 6th and D, 6th and H.
During the event. and then
During the event, or streets that aren't closed for the events. That's where they'd have to park.
it'd be an opportunity to attend the event.
Okay. Thanks. Just curious.
Councilman Jensen.
Yeah, I'm just checking for sure. This resolution goes for this year only. I mean, I think once we know what the parking is going to look like downtown, maybe some of these uses on some of those things just won't happen anymore. But for this year, it certainly should be fine.
Councilwoman Ganem.
No, and I agree with Councilman Jensen. And we just take kind of a look at it this year and see what happens and how many people will be utilizing it in the future. On the other hand, they could join the activity because it's a short period of time from 5 to 8 p.m.
Okay. Take a motion in regards to this item. Councilman Yerger.
Make a motion to approve resolution 2022-115 for the use of the Cabbage parking lot.
Councilwoman Ganem.
Second the motion.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Okay, item 16, receive local option economic development fund, LB 840 quarterly report.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Angie Olson, Plan Administrator. In accordance with the LB 840 plan, I'm here to give you an update on the plan status. In the last 3 months through June, the LB 840 plan activity has consisted of discussing an application with one potential applicant, discussing a potential application with the Greater Fremont Development Council, and notification of a possible film application coming in the near future. A copy of the LB 840 fund status is included with the report, as well as an overview of all the projects that have been funded under the LB 840 plan. To date, there are just over $1.3 million of uncommitted funds in the LB 840 fund. The staff report actually, I think, states 1.4 million. That was done on a preliminary report that did not include all disbursements and receipts through the end of June. And I'm here to answer any questions.
Okay. Questions? Councilman Yerger.
So can you help me with a couple things on your report? Ms. Sanders said that in my previous question on the financial reports that we would see the Tech Park sales funds showing up in your account balances because those monies go in here direct. So where on your report specifically do I see those? I may have overlooked it.
So those are in the receipts portion towards the top. And the specific ones, I believe are sale of lot,
The $277,000 one entry.
right?
Okay, I did have that marked for what is this? Those are the Tech Park lot sales?
That would be it, yep.
Okay. And then we've been spending some, those probably aren't LB 840 funds, never mind. You and I had a conversation earlier about one of the LB 840 recipients having moved locations and whether or not they needed to modify paperwork or whatever. And has that been accomplished? Do they need to modify paperwork and has that been accomplished?
They don't. We ask that they notify us of address changes. But that's been updated. Any notifications that we might need to send out will be mailed to the new address.
Okay, and there's, with regards to Tech Part, again, there's two listed in under disbursements for sewer and water and Techmark infrastructure, and they're all dashed out as though we've spent no funds. That means that we're not spending LB 840 funds, I guess. And that question probably is as much to utilities or city administrator with regards to, we are spending money.
Right.
Several million dollars, but they're not LB 840 spend. Is that correct?
Well, what happens there for example, the paving, those funds are spent out of the street fund initially under a particular project number. And then we go through, the finance department goes through and once a month collects the information on those particular projects, because we do a lot of projects that are funded either through LB 840 or the sales tax for either infrastructure or for streets. The activity happens in the street fund. We bring in a transfer over from those. And, as the audit report is late, so too are we late in transferring the funds over from the sales tax fund over to the street fund for the expenditures that are going out. Because in fact, on your claims tonight, there is another draw for Young Construction. So we are spending, but we haven't pulled the money out yet.
Okay, so those Tech Part that we've amassed $5 or $6 million in spending out there, as I recall, from the previous reports that the previous city administrator and Ms. Mitchell gave to the council a while back. I think we were already pushing over the $5 million mark for spend out there, and we've been spending beyond that yet. So, but those charges are going to be charged against LB 840 rather than general fund budget?
To the extent that they've,
street budget?
excuse me, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. So they will, it'll come out in the form of a transfer, but to the limit that was approved by the various resolutions, those funds will come out of the LB 840 fund. When those funds are exhausted, before we would transfer more out of LB 840 to the street fund, we would need to come to council and request that.
That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Councilman Ellis.
Quick question. When's the LB 840 fund up for renewal before the voters?
So the tax is up in 2024. The plan expires in 2029.
The 2024 will be going back in front of the voters.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions on the LB 840 quarterly report? If there are none, I'd take a motion to receive. Councilman Yerger.
Motion to receive LB 840 fund quarterly report.
Councilman Legband.
I'll second that.
Okay. Cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Item 17, resolution 2022-116, accepting and awarding the proposal of Gov Connection Inc. for Microsoft Enterprise Agreement True Up. Staff report.
Mayor, City Council, Jeff Shanahan, Utility Manager. Warren's not here, so I'm gonna do the best I can with this, but from what I understand, our SQL license was not up to date, and we need to move on with our Microsoft Enterprise software. In order to do that, we have to bring the SQL software up to date. And that's what this is for, is to bring those licensing into compliance.
Questions? Councilman Legband.
Was this a budgeted item?
This was not. I think Warren has just taken over that department. And when they did the audit, they found out that this was not current. But we have to do it in order to move on with the rest of the project.
Councilman Yerger.
So along those same lines, because Councilman Lakeman stole my question, where do those funds come from? $48,000, not insignificant.
Understood.
I'll take that one. There has been some turnover in the IT department and their operations. So the salary savings is where we would essentially kind of use that appropriation for this expense.
Okay, any other questions? I kind of do that a lot with my wife, you know.
Yep.
I need an answer. She usually gives me always the right one.
Yeah, so does Dan.
Thank you.
You bet.
Councilman Legband.
If there are no other comments or questions, okay, I make a motion to approve resolution 2022-116.
Councilwoman Ganem.
Second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
All right, moving on to item 21. Move to confirm appointments of Brandon Ramirez and Cody Cruz as police officer per mayor recommendation. So it is my pleasure tonight to bring forward two appointments here to the police department, Brandon Ramirez and Cody Cruz. Both go through our Civil Service Commission. And again, I'm excited to be able to present those to both of those candidates for you tonight. If there are any questions for me, I would take them, but if not, I'd take a motion to approve the recommendation. Councilman Jensen.
With no questions, I'll make the motion to approve your recommendations.
Okay. Councilman Sukram.
I'll second.
Okay. Cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
We have now Officer Cruz here today, so let's give him a round of applause. Welcome to the Fremont Police Department. Welcome again, and looking forward to working with you, and thanks for all the efforts of our police department within the city. Okay, moving on to unfinished business. Ordinance 5621, amending section 6-432, penalties of the Fremont Municipal Code. This will be for second reading.
Thank you, Mayor Travis Chacott, City Attorney. We went through this ordinance section at the last meeting. There were some suggestions on how to alter it to make it more clear and concise, so that's what I did. This is under the graffiti section of city code, under the misdemeanor section and a misdemeanor chapter. So what I did is previously it said, and I apologize for no red line version being in the packet, but I'll specifically point out what is being changed here. It says, in addition to any other penalties that may be applied under this chapter, that's an addition. Any person violating the provisions of, it used to say this division, but now I changed it to of sections 429 through 436-431. Shall be punished in accordance with 6501, and it sets those minimum misdemeanor penalties. This was to shore up that we can have discretion on other misdemeanor charges that are in the master fee schedule, which is coming up later in the agenda. So I just ask that we council move to amend the ordinance for second reading to reflect these changes, and then waive and hold third reading tonight. I'll take any questions.
Okay. Questions for legal? Councilman Yerger.
Well, thank you for clarifying what changes that you made, because we said we would have some. And I don't have the original ones that we discussed at first reading, but my recollection was that we were removing the fines and penalties out of this code. They are now back in 432, and now they're back in. We're stating 150 and 300 is going to stay in code, and we'll have something either repeating that or augmenting that in the master fee schedule?
No, the master fee schedule won't include this graffiti section. Those apply strictly to graffiti. So anything, those are the minimum amounts that can be charged.
Okay, so that will stay in code now, where
Correct.
before we were going to take it out. It would have, because one of my concerns in the master fee schedule is there wasn't any references to graffiti. So we're going to leave them in code.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
As it's written in the packet, that's going to be the version that I asked the council to approve.
And it was just those two lines that had red line changes from the first time round?
Yes, ma'am.
Were there other changes that were in the red line version from first reading?
Nope, I put back, the dollar amounts were put back in, and then I just changed the division to
Okay.
those sections. and
So
then
just
added the first
those are the
caveat.
only changes now that exist completely to the code.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions for legal? Okay, comments from the public? Okay, seeing none, any additional comments from council? Councilman Yerger?
I did raise this question and I could have asked, I guess, earlier on my first reading of questions, but this is the fix for 432. And at last first reading, I questioned whether or not we could or ought to be making some changes to 6501 with regards to this and what we're doing with the master fee schedule. And I'm still curious as to why we aren't necessarily doing that. If in fact what we want is to say, throughout our code, especially in the section 6 under the police, we're going to have several things that we're going to specifically identify. And we're going to leave them in code now. And there may be some that are mirroring Nebraska state statute with regards to fines and penalties. So wouldn't it be appropriate in 6501 for us to state that and encompass everything that is referencing to the master fee schedule, rather than having to go into these various 432 and others with regards to dog license, whatever, where we might say, yeah, these are the basic charges, but there's something else in the master fee schedule, because there seems to be overlap on some sections of code and not on other sections. And wouldn't clean up in a 6501 paragraph take care of all that?
The intention here is to allow for certain types of discretion when pre-filing for these charges. Section 501 says it's a misdemeanor and you'll be punished up to a year. And it's the catch-all penalty for anything, any code section that does not specifically reference a different penalty. So 6501 allows us to charge a minimum, or it sets the max amount that we can charge, but it allows us to also charge with a misdemeanor. The master fee schedules, it's providing notice of the potential fine that could be used when you are being allowed to have a citation waived, meaning there will be no complaint filed in court against you. And one major reason to have that master fee schedule be a public document that's approved by council is it provides a procedural due process to any potential misdemeanors. The catch-all provision allows the city to charge with a misdemeanor if there's nothing in the specific code. So I'm kind of reading it the opposite way, is that's the safety net for charging with a misdemeanor if there's nothing specifically in the code section referencing either the master fee schedule or something in such as the graffiti ordinance itself.
Okay, well, I'm just telling you what my thought was on that, and we can move on. But if that section actually read, any person who violates any prohibitions or provisions of any article of this chapter shall be deemed guilty of a misdemeanor unless otherwise specified in the particular article or section for which the person stands convicted of violating. The penalty for such violations shall be in accordance with Nebraska law or the penalties set forth in the city's master fee schedule. And then it can finish on with $1,000 fine and imprisonment, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Then you have everything covered in this penalties section that you could possibly charge. The full misdemeanor values, anything listed in section 6 as an individual charge, and anything that you decide to put into the master fee schedule, it's all right here.
Like I said, the broad catch-all provision does make sure we have everything covered. There are certain things, misdemeanor charges that aren't included in the master fee schedule, harboring illegal aliens and all that, those types of sections. So I would prefer to keep the section 501 the same, but that's, we could bring that back at a separate council.
You and I
meeting.
can talk about that offline. I mean, this is just a section 6 misdemeanor. This is only for
This
police
is strict-
regulations. This is not for anything outside of the police regulations, right?
The change presented tonight is strictly for the graffiti sections. We're
Yes, I
just
understand.
cleaning up the language. Yeah.
I understand. I just thought it could be covered with this paragraph. We wouldn't even have to change that, but that's fine. You and I can talk about that, different topic then. Thanks.
Any additional comments? We need a motion to amend. Councilman Legban,
I'll make a motion to amend and then hold second reading of the amended ordinance 5621.
Councilman Sukram,
I will second that.
cast your votes. To amend, yes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Okay. Councilman Jensen,
Yeah, I'll make the motion to hold second reading of amended ordinance 5621.
Councilman Sukram,
I'll second that.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
We'll now have second reading.
An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, amending chapter 6, article 4 of the Fremont Municipal Code, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict with this ordinance and providing when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect on second reading.
Legal had requested to move to final tonight, so I guess I would take a motion in regards to that if council so desires. Councilman Sukram,
I'll make the motion to suspend the rules and go to final reading.
okay. Councilman Jensen,
I will second that.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
We'll now have final reading.
An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, amending chapter 6, article 4 of the Fremont Municipal Code, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict with this ordinance and providing when this ordinance shall be full force and effect on final reading.
Okay, cast your final vote.
Ordinance is approved 6-0, Mayor.
All right. Item 24, resolution 2022-105 to approve the master fee schedule of the city of Fremont to authorize staff to assess those fees accordingly.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Jody Sanders, City Administrator. I've included the updated master fee schedule. I have included the Fremont Municipal Code sites, if you will, the reference on the police fines that Chief Elliott talked about at the last meeting. Those are included in the middle column. And also, I apologize, I earnestly thought that I had included the tree removal fee. I had not. It is on page 355 of your agenda under planning, and we have the fee for that. The amounts that are changing, you'll see in red, and there are some that are being kind of compressed. So instead of breaking it out with different fees for different days of the week, for example, we're saying it's the same amount regardless of the day that you're renting a facility or the fee to get into Splash Station. If you're over 5 years old, the dollar amount is the same for everyone. So I'll take any questions.
Questions for staff on the master fee schedule? Councilman Yerger.
Probably can't put my fingers on it right at the moment. There's one that says that this is a fine of $25 for business district parking violation. What's the business district reference here mean? Something different than the BID, something like the downtown commercial area? What's the parameters of the business district for which you can get a $25 parking fee?
Jeff
Fine.
Elliott, Chief of Police. My understanding is somewhere in the code, the business district is actually defined. I want to say, and it's been years since I looked this up, but I want to say it was everything south of Military, west of Broad. It's defined, or it used to be, at one point was defined in the code. So if it says business district parking, it would mean parking in that specific area as defined by the code. And again, it's been a long time since I've seen it, but it was in there at one point.
Okay, well, I just want to make sure it's still valid, because if it's not, we don't know how to enforce that because there's no parameters, because it's not self-descriptive. So that was a concern. One of the things that I think is not up to date are the vendor license fees. We just passed the vendor ordinance. And I don't think the $40 fee is the fee anymore. Based on what we allowed, they're paying an annual fee. I think, it seemed like it was higher than $40. And then Jody, you said that you put something in on the trees with regards to, that was for the permit to remove the 5 trees, right? Because
Right,
code
it's-
says you
it's
have
a
to,
permit.
you have to have a
Yes.
permit. Is there someplace in here where there is a specified fine for if you do tree removal in excess of or without a permit? Is there a fine for how much that is?
There is a fine for basically not getting the required permits. And of course, as you said earlier, I may not be able to put my hands on it right this minute. Let me look for that while Tyler references the vendor
So
question.
the mobile food vendor is $100. And then if they're going to be in the downtown business district, it would be $100. And I think when we were kind of working on this, that ordinance had not been in effect yet, but I think that's a change that we would want to make to that section. And so the street vendor license would be removed and replaced with a mobile food vendor license, showing that for the city-wide, it would be $100. And then if they were wanting to be in the downtown area, it would be an additional $100. And that $100 being forwarded to the business improvement district.
Well, and I don't have any objections to having that, but if we have it in ordinance, which we do, this is kind of like the graffiti that we put back into ordinance and said, well, we're going to leave those amounts in ordinance. We have the vendor fees in ordinance. So should they be repeated in the master fee schedule or no? Because we have to maintain both. And if we're going to maintain both on vendors, then why aren't we maintaining both on graffiti?
So when I helped, when we first put this all together, I did my best to try to scrub the city code of all references to dollar amounts so that we could look at the schedule. And so the ordinance we approved included those dollar amounts. I would recommend looking at that ordinance if there is a change in the future to remove those dollar amounts from the ordinance and include it in the fee schedule. And just have the city code basically reference the fee schedule.
Yeah, the significance of that to me as a council person is that ordinances are very clear and they take 3 readings to change. Master fee schedule doesn't. It's just a simple up, down vote and you're done. And whether or not you want to just go in and make those changes with regards to what we've established by ordinance, by striking them all. And if you're going to strike them, then I think you need to be consistent and you need to move them all into the master fee schedule, not just some, or you leave them where they are in the ordinance and leave it that way, govern accordingly. But I think it's probably not a good idea to repeat them for fear that you get them out of sync. And somebody says your master fee schedule says that and the ordinance says this, and which one do you take to court? So I would encourage us probably not to duplicate, but to settle on whichever way we want to do it. That's my recommendation.
Okay.
The place where the violation of tree removal and tree grubbing is, that's a violation of the UDC. And we have added the section for violations of the UDC where the first offense would be $100 and continuing offenses would be up to $100 a day.
Okay.
That would be for each day after for continuing offenses.
Any other questions for staff on the fee schedule? Any comments from the public? Seeing none, any additional comments from council? Councilman Yerger.
I would encourage to take a look at section 6103.01, 6103.02, maybe 6.112. I think they cover amounts. And, but they're not listed in the master fee schedule currently. So I'm kind of confused since they're already in code. Maybe we don't need to, the way you ended up handling 432. I marked them originally because I thought they had values in them and we didn't. So I'm still confused as to what our primary goal is going to be. Have them in code where we already have them and leave them out of the master fee schedule, or cut them out of code and put them in the master fee schedule, because I think we're still a little bit inconsistent, unfortunately.
So could I state something, just like from a general overview? We have fees in the master fee schedule. I mean, those don't have really any legal process associated with them. I would defer to legal counsel on, when it comes to fines, that whatever makes his job easiest for prosecuting these and having quick and simple adjudications. The fee schedule is simpler to just keep in the fee schedule, if that makes sense.
The comment that I would make as well is, as we were moving through with the food vendor permits, I know for a fact that we've asked that question, should this be part of the ordinance or should it be part of the master fee schedule? And council approved it with it being inside the ordinance itself. And so we're kind of at this point, it feels like we're getting conflicting information. So, as a council, if we can get some clarity on that at a future time, that would be very helpful.
Councilman Jensen.
If there's no further talk, I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution 2022-105.
Councilman Legban.
I'll second that.
Okay, cast your votes.
Motion carries 5-1, Mayor.
Moving on to new business, item 27, Business Improvement District Number 1 Progress Report. We'll now have a report from the BID.
My name's Tom Cody, 2625 County Road 11, Fremont, Nebraska. I'm also chairman of the BID. And just to give you a quick update, we've tried to increase our communications dramatically from where we were, and we've been emailing out a summary of the minutes of the meeting to the city council, to the city staff, and also to a group of, we've got about 70 other emails that we send it out to on a regular basis. One thing that we've done is that we've hired Melissa Powell, who happens to be present right here. And she works for both BID and for Main Street. And it's really a pleasure to work with somebody of Melissa's caliber. She makes a lot of things possible, and she's really the reason that we can have more consistent information shared between all the elements of the BID. Another thing that's happened is we've had two of our board members resign, Bill Parks and Ginger Rosenthal. They just didn't have time to put in on the deal, so we're down to 12 members. I would like to just take a minute to thank the city staff and the mayor for all the assistance that they've given us, because with the knowledge that you folks have and with the employees of the city pitching in on many of our projects, it makes so much more possible for us. And I really appreciate that. As the chairman, you've always got answers for our questions, and I appreciate that. We're waiting on the city to complete its comprehensive plan so that we can complete our strategic plan. And so we've been working on it, and we have a pretty good handle on our strategic plan on the marketing side of things. And we have a current budget this year of $20,000 that we're giving grants out to people who are clubs or organizations who are going to bring people downtown. And we now have 10 of those grants that have been issued, and we still are taking grants. We've got some money left on our, just so you know where the money comes from, 10,000 comes from the BID budget, and 10,000 comes from through Main Street from private donations. And so BID is only paying half of those grants that are offered. And so far we've had 2 events already happen. The Downtown Development Group, I think is what it's called, Glenn, that they had a spring fling that we sponsored, and then also we contributed to John C. Fremont Days. So that's going pretty well. And we have the committee that reviews the results or reviews the applications, and then they turn it into the BID, and we vote on those. Next year, we hope to go to 40,000 in our grant fund for some of those events. We've also set up a new committee that we haven't had in the past. It's the Committee of Equalization, and Daniel Check is the chairman of that committee. And they have 2 goals. One is to review the boundaries of the BID and see if there needs to be any changes on there to keep the cost and benefit more equal. And the other thing that they're doing is they're looking at a 2-tier fee schedule so that people in the heart pay more than people on the outside. They're very difficult questions, and we've worked with city staff on what they've done, how they've done it, that kind of thing. And so we'll have that worked out. We should have an answer on that in about 12 months, and that'll put us 6 months before we come up for renewal for a 5-year BID. And we'll keep you posted on that as we get closer. The other thing we've done is we put together a multicultural committee for the BID district to try to unite the district. And that's chairman there is Berta Quintero. And to start with, we took our summary and we published it in Spanish and English. And then Berta, myself, and Leslie Chavez went door to door to all of those merchants and gave them the deal. And we had everybody was very positive about receiving the information and looking forward to more information, except for one. And so it was really a good trip to get around to meet some of those merchants. I had not met a lot of them before. Our maintenance committee has been pretty active, that we pay to have the green spaces maintained throughout the spring and summer and fall. And we also have worked with the city to repair the parking lot, the 2-story parking lot. The stairs going upstairs has gotten shabby over time, and so they're going to replace some of the parts with that. And that's work in progress right now. And we also replaced the 14 signs on 14 of the parking lots downtown that tells you what lot it's in, what the name of the lot is, or who it honors to have that lots named after them. Our equalization committee has really done a good job so far in identifying what the problems are. They don't have answers yet, but it's quite a chore to do that. the projects committee, we do have our PA system currently in place and it's working on 2 speakers. And we were able to accomplish that. We changed the way we were doing business, where before we started the project, we had open public meetings. So on that speaker system, we mailed to every property owner in the district, 220 some people, and invited them to a meeting. And then it was a positive response. And so then we continued on with that, and we were able to bust the price down from a $70,000 project coming out of BID's funds to where we had contributions from the CVB, the Convention Bureau. We had the Keno funds that you guys had given us. We also have a contribution from Main Street through some private funds. And then the BID now only has to pay a little over $28,000 for the $70,000 speaker system. So that's coming along pretty well. And where are we headed is another part of the question. And we're talking about some projects that are out there, and I don't want to get everybody excited about what they are because we haven't had any public meetings yet. We haven't worked out the budget on them, but some of the things that have come up in conversation would be to put a metal cover on the top of the parking lot, the 2-story parking lot, put a metal cover over it so that more people would park up there. The reason they park underneath is that they're sheltered from weather. And so we thought it would help spread the parking out if we would cover that top lot up there. So recent budget is about $1.5 million to put a steel frame up there that would support a roof. So that's a pretty good number for a group that's only collecting $47,000 a year in taxes. So we need partnerships in order to pull something like that off. But we found that most of the projects that we want to do are very expensive. So we've spent a lot of time developing partnerships with other groups downtown, because if we all work together, we've got a good shot at doing almost anything that needs to be done. And if we all work independently, then we're going to have a bunch of small projects out there. Another project that we've got that is under consideration is to beautify some of the bump outs. And we've got private money that is volunteering to do one intersection to show what could be done. It would give us a working, something that people could look at and say, I want that on my block and I'm willing to contribute, that type thing. So, but the process of more communication, a change in the way we're proposing our projects, where we meet with the people before we start the project while it's still in the planning stage, after we have some budgets and some things like that, how we would pay for it. And that seems to be a very positive approach for the people downtown, because they actually get some input in it before it gets to be a full-blown project. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions? Councilwoman Ganem?
No, not so much a question, but thank you for all your time and your work. And certainly I just hear rumors. Why not put a third level up on the parking level with a overview?
Well, Jody has an engineer coming to take a look at if the structure would hold a third tier. Rumor has it that it was built to hold a third tier, but so we'll know more down the road.
Councilman Yerger?
Don't really have any questions, because that was one of the questions that I wanted to at least throw out. If you're looking at parking space at the Cabbage parking facility, that third level might be something to look into before you would
Our estimates
on
a parking lot would be raised, a third level would be $30,000 per stall. Would be.
I realize there's a significant difference in cost, so
Yeah.
I'm not trying to dissuade you from looking into the other. Just looking at both would be good so that we don't waste your money in case that we need the extra space. But I do want to thank you for coming, and I want to thank the BID for communicate. Obviously, much more communication is going on, which is one of the concerns and challenges that we had in discussions before. I'm really pleased to hear that those things are going on, and so I commend you for coming, giving us the report, and I'm thankful that things are headed in the right direction. I'm glad that it's unfortunate the speaker systems weren't working for John C. Fremont days yet, but at least they're in the testing mode, so that's good. And so anyway, thanks to you and the group. I know you've subdivided into many working groups, and those groups are working hard, it sounds like, so you can convey our thanks, at least mine. Thanks.
Good. Vince, you have anything to say?
No, I think this guy in our leadership is Vince O'Connor, 435 West 21st Street, member of BID and the CVB. Just a couple of comments. Joe, you started your, excuse me, Mayor, you started your presentation today about the flood in 19. May I suggest, with the possible exception of Councilman Legban, that none of you were here when the BID started 5 years ago. And since then, we were all affected by the flood in 19, 20 and 21 with COVID, and we're still doing it now. A lot of things have happened downtown, the BID area, some of them good, some of them not good. We had an awful lot of businesses that opened, a lot of businesses that closed. Everybody's talking about the 505, which is wonderful after 15 years. Least we shouldn't forget the fire in Johnson's apartments. That'll take some more time, okay? But one of the things that the BID has been doing that I think being a member of it is very, very positive is how we have always worked with the other groups such as Main Street, CVB, and the city. And yes, you were here, but you were in a different title. But let's see what else. Oh, and the parking lot. You can have 50, there's 50 spaces up on the parking spaces. I challenge anybody to go up there and see more than 10 places occupied any given day. Many, many times, a lot of us have gone up there just to see and count. And that's one of the things that the BID has been looking at also. But that's it. Thank you.
I'll just say I appreciate all that the BID has done over the last 6 months in regards to the renewal. I can tell that you're focused, especially with the 10 sponsorships already committed to help bring traffic downtown. And by supporting the events downtown, you're essentially helping traffic come downtown and helping the businesses. I think it's also an item of note that the private donations, not putting all the burden of the projects on the BID itself, but looking at private donations has been just quite a success as well to help supplement those expenses. And then also getting the speaker system done, and yes, we were close getting it in by John C. Fremont days, but that was good to see lots of progress made on that and getting that taken care of as well. The multicultural committee, the communication, the commitment to that, that you've been sending out after every meeting, a update. So, I mean, wow, what a lot you have done over the last, since your renewal to make a commitment to your downtown and to your members. And so I just appreciate that. I want to thank you for all the work you're doing. And again, thank you for coming here to give us a report. So. Okay. I take a motion to receive the BID report. Councilman Jensen.
Make the motion to receive.
Councilman Legban.
I will second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Item 28, mayor item. This is a resolution 2022-121 declaring a public nuisance and causing the demolition of residents at 1506 East Dodge Street. So legal.
Thank you, Mayor. Travis Jacott, City Attorney. This is a show cause hearing required by city code for the nuisance that we discussed last April. The property owners have not contacted the city, have not abated the status of the residents. So this is the final step of abating the nuisance. So initially, this is actually has to kind of be like a hearing where the council receives evidence and makes a determination. So initially, if you look at pages 487 to 503 that's contained in the packet, I would ask that the council, even though it's already public record, since this is the nature of a show cause hearing, I'd ask that the council take a motion to receive those pages tonight.
Okay, Councilman Yerger,
Motion to receive the documents as requested.
Councilman Legband,
I'll second that.
cast your votes.
Councilmember Ellis, I didn't get your vote. Thank you very much. Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
And then also required is an affidavit of service. So the property owners, mortgagees, or lessees of the property had to be notified. And one of the methods of notification is posting the notice on the door of the structure. And that's what we did. So I'll just read this affidavit and ask that the council receive it. It's a affidavit of Steve Kunasik of a building inspector with the city of Fremont. On July 6, 2022, he caused to be served a notice of show cause hearing by posting said notice on the door of the property located upon real property described commonly known as 1506 East Dodge Street. And the notice has been included in the packet and received by council. I'd ask that this affidavit is signed in the presence of a notary, so it's a sworn affidavit. I'd ask that the council receive this affidavit.
Okay. Motion to receive the affidavit. Councilman Sukram.
I'll make the motion to receive the affidavit.
Okay. Councilman Jensen,
I will second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Thank you. And with that, I just ask the council approve resolution 2022-121.
Okay. Motion to approve.
We need to do public comment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any comments from the public? Okay, seeing none. Any additional comments from council or motion, Councilman Jensen?
If there's no additional comments, I'll make the motion to approve resolution 2022-121.
Councilman Sukram,
I will second it.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Item 29 is a executive session for strategy session with respect to real estate purchase and litigation update. Councilman Yerger.
Yes. I move to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing real estate purchase and an update and discussion of open and recent litigations and settlements.
And for the further reason that the executive session.
And for the further reason that the executive session is necessary for the protection of the public interest.
Thank you. Councilman Legband. Okay, a motion has been made and seconded to go into executive session for the purpose of a strategy session with respect to real estate purchase and litigation update, and for the further reason that the executive session is necessary for the protection of the public interest. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, the pending motion is to go into executive session for the purpose of strategy session with respect to real estate purchase and litigation update, and for the further reason that the executive session is necessary for the protection of the public interest. Cast your vote.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
A motion to go into executive session for the purpose of a strategy session with respect to real estate purchase and litigation update, and for the further reason that the executive session is necessary for the protection of the public interest has been approved. Discussion will be limited to a strategy session with respect to real estate purchase and litigation update No official actions or votes will be taken during the executive session. We'll now proceed to the conference room. We'll have our utility general manager, our city administrator, legal counsel, and myself. Take a motion to come out of the executive session. Councilman Jensen,
I will make the motion to come out of executive session.
Councilman Sukram,
I'll second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Okay, take a motion to adjourn. Councilman Jensen,
I will make the motion to adjourn.
Councilman Sukram,
I'll second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
We are adjourned.